One thing to keep in mind when we're talking about state level crimes versus federal crimes, for all practical purposes, there's a tremendous amount of overlap. Many people think that there's something truly unique about federal offenses. Federal offenses do require some form of federal contact, but it's so minimal that you're almost hard pressed to find a serious state level crime that is not a federal crime. So the jurisdictions have a degree of discretion in whether they charge on the state or federal level. Oftentimes it's based upon the origin of the investigation. If there's a drug investigation on the state level, we're finding almost 100% there is some correlation between the state investigation and federal, whether that's officers from one state authority cooperating with a federal authority or funds coming from the federal level to the state level. There's generally crossover. One way we have on delineating or sometimes seeing a distinction between two is the magnitude or the size of the case. Oftentimes, though, if you have an informant on the federal level, they'll try to go with a federal case. I'll give you an example. We handled a large multi-pound cocaine case in a state court here last year. And I don't know exactly why they filed it on the state level, because the quantity was clearly a quantity you'd see on a federal level. Our client's position in the case was quite precarious. He had a gun, there were over 2 kilos of cocaine, and he had a serious record. He was looking at potentially a 40, 50, 60-year sentence in state court. We were able to determine there was an informant in the case. The informant turned out to be a federal informant. This is a state-filed case. Because the federal government did not want to disclose its informant, we were able to put the state into a catch-22 position and had a judge order disclosure of the informant. Since it wasn't a federal prosecution, the federal DEA really didn't have a great deal of interest in the case. So instead of the disclosure of the informant as required by the court, the district attorney ended up offering us a plea that turned out to be a 12-month sentence on what would have been a life sentence had they not had the problem with a federal informant on a state case. That would be an example of federal and state law and how you can utilize the distinction between the two to your benefit based on your own experience. There's a crime that could have been charged in either place. So that's what's really, most of the state crimes are federal crimes, and oftentimes the dollar amount or who is making the case may dictate where the case is ultimately filed.